Welcome to Hermit Woods, where there's a story in every bottle. You're live. Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers, everybody.
Cheers.
Toast to another Monday night.
Ooh, toasting over the
Oh, mine's down here somewhere.
Why don't I pass it so it's...
Oh, it's
all
all
right.
right. We're good. We're good.
Pass.
Cheers.
There.
Cheers.
I
Cheers.
don't want to spill. There we go. I think this piano might cost more than your laptop.
You think?
Space MacBook. This is a real fancy piano.
So welcome, folks. Welcome to another Monday night. We're here with Chris Miga, who I will introduce in just a moment. Let me get some of the particulars out of the way, and I'll be able to get them away more rapidly because Ken isn't here to disrupt me, because he tries every week. Yes, he tries very hard. Yes. So yes, welcome to our Facebook Live. If you are joining us for the very first time, we would love it if you would subscribe to our Facebook channel by clicking the bell on your screen. That little bell is a subscription bell. And then if you're on YouTube, where's the button on YouTube? Is it under me?
I think it is. Yes. Yeah.
It's under me, right under
Your
here.
left hand there. Oh, yeah.
There's
Very
a
easy access
subscription button down there. If you click that, you'll become a subscriber to our YouTube channel. And every time we go live, whether it be here at the winery or on the slopes of a ski area or in Narragansett Bay or wherever we might find ourselves, you'll get notification and you'll be able to join in to our story. And if you are watching today, we'd love to know who you are. So if you'd let us know by making a comment in the comment section that you're here. And if you have any questions during the broadcast, please ask them. And Marika will either answer them directly, or she will bring them to the fore and we will discuss your question on the show. Also, if you know people who you think would enjoy this presentation, please share our broadcast to your feed so that others can learn about it. And we'd love it if you'd like our post as well, so we can get more exposure out there into the world. So I think I covered it all, and so let's get on with the show. We're here today, like I said, with Chris Miga, and many of you probably already know Chris. Chris has been playing piano for almost 2 years, year and a half,
probably.
Year and a half. That's how we met. Chris started playing on our Saturday night piano night back in 21. And not too long after that, Chris got much more deeply involved in helping us organize our music venue. He helps organize the artists. He helps with stage setup, with sound engineering. He books all of the pianists that play on Friday and Saturday night. He also books the warm-up acts that join us on Thursday in the pre-show on Thursday for our listening room series. So Chris has been really involved, and most importantly, Chris has become a friend and has been enormously helpful in us thinking about the venue and the future of the venue and how we can get more music here and get more of you to become familiar with and aware of what we're doing, so we can make this a successful music venue. And it's been much appreciated. So I thought we'd bring Chris on and have a conversation, because Chris also has a lot going on when he's not here. In fact, I had the opportunity to see the Lakes Region Symphony on a Sunday afternoon, and Chris is the executive director of the Lakes Region Symphony, and he also plays the piano for the symphony on occasion. And we'll learn more about that from Chris. But anyway, the show on Sunday was absolutely fabulous. It was their Christmas show. It was the Christmas Crooners?
Christmas with the Crooners.
Christmas with the Crooners. And actually, the lead singer
He was a crooner.
and he plays piano here.
He's
He'll be
here.
here on the 23rd, actually.
Yes, and then I'm about to book him more into the first quarter. So yeah.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
terrific.
yeah, absolutely.
He was fantastic last night.
I emailed him today, just thanking him again, talking about Q1 bookings here, and at that particular show, I did announce, this was our best holiday show ever the night before at the Colonial Theater. And Mike wrote me back and he says, "You're right. As long as I've been doing it, it was the best."
So he really
best show. Yeah, he agreed. Either tempo, song choice, staging, whatever it was, that intangible that you get during a show. So yeah, you came to a good show.
good. Did you play at the Colonial for the first time this year?
No, our first year was last year when their inaugural season.
Oh, okay.
So we played their holiday concert and a May concert, our Pops concert last year. So this was our second holiday performance at the Colonial. And if you've been inside it,
I have not.
It's-
Well, I
You haven't
was.
been over there
I
yet?
was
Oh.
there before they renovated it,
Yeah.
when it was a bunch of little movie theaters.
It's wonderful. I live within walking distance of the theater, and we've been trying to take advantage of it as much as possible. We've been to several shows in the past year there.
Okay.
It's great being able to just.
Played at the Lakes Auditorium on Sunday,
Right.
and it was Saturday night. You played at the concert hall in the Colonial. What was the difference for you?
is beautifully restored.
Yeah.
It's the opera house kind of feel, whatever. But it isn't quite conducive to something like an orchestra. Because what you don't see from the audience is when you're on stage, the stage goes up 3 open stories. So when it's a big box on that stage. And what happens with an orchestra type thing, with no amplification, nothing pushing the sound towards the audience, the sound has a tendency to go up.
And then back
not
down again.
out. So our first year there was a little, it's always a work in progress, but even though the violins and the cellos and the violas are in front, you couldn't really hear them over the horns from the back. So this year we ended up putting 4 or 5 microphones on the string sections and brought them forward. So the sound at the Colonial for orchestral purposes, much better in year 2. So we learn as we go. But
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit more about the symphony. How long have you been involved with the symphony, and what has been your role over that time?
I have been involved since, I think, year 2000, so 22 years.
Oh, wow.
I took a little across the street from Hermit Woods. And I stopped in one day, and she and her mom were on the board running it at the time. And we were just chatting. They found out I was a pianist, and they gave each other the sideward glance, like, I think the fishing pole went out, and they started to
No, I think they hooked you.
They hooked me.
They were pulling it in.
So it was interesting. I joined the board shortly after that, just sort of an ad hoc thing. And Kim and I became great friends. And then over time, she moved on, the board moved on, you get new people, that kind of thing. So I've been playing and board membering since 2000. Yeah. I took a little hiatus. My dad got ill in there somewhere. So it was just too much at that time. So I took 2 or 3 years off and then rejoined. I don't remember the time frame, but yeah.
And just
more than a decade. But as we expanded the orchestra, all of our, everything used to be Interlake centric here in Meredith. Rehearsals and all performances were at the high school. But 2 years ago, right after we all kind of emerged from COVID, we connected with Plymouth State University, one of their pianists there, he was new on the faculty, contacted us saying we should partner up with Plymouth State, which was great.
Yeah.
At the same time, the Colonial Theater was opening. So in 1 year, literally last year, we went to both Plymouth State and the Colonial Theater and Interlakes. So you can imagine, you know, and as board chair, we're supposed to be governance roles, not really doing, right? But the workload literally tripled in a year trying to manage 3 venues, 3 schedules, 3 different sets of people, all of the stuff, you know, as a business owner, everything that no one else tends to see if you're not in that role. So I was ready to resign from the board, just saying it's too big. I've gotten it this far. I'm not taking credit for it, but here we are. And it was a little overwhelming. And,
Yeah.
So the board came back and basically said, no, you can't leave. You know, there's just such a 22-year knowledge bank up here. So it was just a shift in role. So I was more of a hands-on person anyway. We never had an executive director, and that's really the role of an executive director, is to kind of do the stuff while the board dictates the stuff. So I'm not officially a board member anymore, but
Go back to the earlier days. How did you, or when did you become a musician, and what was that like for you as you developed your skills as a pianist? I assume you started out playing piano?
It's funny you say. I don't think of myself as a musician to this day.
Really?
Yeah, it's not my. It's an avocation. It's not a vocation. I do remember 9 years old at my grandmother's house. It was the old upright piano, you know, those dark brown ones and stuff.
We had one in our house for many years. My wife plays the piano.
And there were broken keys and the ivories were coming off, and I just remember being drawn to it. You know, I liken it to the Harry Potter movies where they say the wand chooses you. I feel like the piano chose me. You know, that kind of thing. But it was just, and my dad was a violinist, you know, professionally and teaching. So music was in the family, and my brother played trumpet. And I don't think my other 2 siblings played anything. But
Your dad he played in symphony too, right?
yeah, he was a freelance musician and a music teacher in down in Massachusetts, and a couple of different school systems down there. But he would play with when Broadway was very busy in Boston in the 70s. You know, the Shubert Theater and before the Wang Theater, I forget what it's called, but when there was a theater district in Boston, he was constantly playing the Broadway shows that came there. He wasn't a permanent member, but he did play with the Boston Pops and the Boston Symphony and stuff like that. Very low key, never, you know, it was a job. It wasn't like, oh my God, Dad plays with the Boston Symphony Orchestra. You know? It was just, oh, Dad's working tonight, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Did you take lessons as you were growing up?
I did, you know, again, as a starting pianist, you find your neighborhood woman who's teaching piano at her house. And, you know, I remember back in the day, actually my first teacher was the organist at our local church, St. Pat's in Natick, Mass. And I took from him and then went with Mrs. Pearl Gustafson up in,
that's the right sort of
exactly.
name.
You know, and
I can picture her.
it was funny because she had the piano that you took lessons on. And then over here was her real piano that you couldn't touch. You know what I mean? Ever. You know? So we practiced on the spinet, you know, but behind you was always the nice Steinway behind you that you couldn't play. But the thing I remember, it was funny, was you know, this was back in the early 70s. You know, my lessons were $3 a half hour. You know, that's how much we paid for piano lessons.
Wow.
So, yeah.
What do you pay today for a half an hour lesson?
Should I say the number? Oh, for half?
Sure.
I tend to not teach half-hour lessons.
Well, whatever. What's it cost to get
Well, no,
piano
it's interesting
lessons?
there because half hours are more if you're a beginner student and you're just learning and acclimating and everything is brand new to you. After 30 minutes, you are so consumed with whatever you're trying to be taught. Your time limit, you're dead. Going to an hour, because I prefer students who already know this stuff And then we can talk about theory, we can talk about voicing, we can talk about hand position, we can talk about relaxation, we can talk about a variety of things, because you already know the basics. So you can get into a much more in-depth discussion with more time. So, you know, currently, honestly, I charge $80 an hour for that. I don't have a lot of students, but
That seems perfectly
someone
reasonable.
came knocking on the door, and you talk and you chat and you listen and you.
I think in high school we were paying 60 or 70 for a half hour. Where I was taking lessons.
So I'm low. Is that what you're saying?
It's a bargain. You heard it here first. And guess what? We talked about this.
Yeah.
If Chris has a student that would benefit from learning here, Chris is welcome to use this piano to give lessons. So if you're out there and you're looking for lessons,
You can find me through Bob,
and you don't have to play the spinet. You get the actual Yamaha C3.
Well, the beauty there is I have this piano at home, and I think, Bob, I told you before, when you the facility was scoping out this piano, John Lorenz consulted me. I didn't know why he was consulting me, saying, if you were going to buy a piano, what would you buy? I said, just go Yamaha C3. That's what I have. I love it. I can't, it's a great jazz type piano. So I don't know if this was a precursor to you ending up with this.
It was
coincidental.
It was. No, it wasn't coincidental at all. About sometime around early 2019, we decided we were going to buy a piano. And before buying it, we all felt like we really wanted to learn more about it. What did that mean? What did we want to buy if we were going to create a venue like we're trying to create?
Right.
So John actually reached out on his own time to all the people he knew who played piano, and polled everybody to find out if we were to have the perfect piano for this type of venue, what would it be? And it was clear. In a relative short order, it was clear that the Yamaha C3 was the best one.
That's funny, because I think I also have played with John at the Taylor community in Laconia as well, and they just acquired, I think, the same piano. So I think it might have done double duty on the consultation.
Sure.
Parties.
Why not?
Yeah.
And it wasn't long after we did that survey that John actually, I think he found this piano listed down at Daryl's Music Hall as a used piano. And he reached out and he said, we'd like to come down and tour the shop. And we spent the whole day playing pianos. It was quite a unique experience, to say the least.
I've done the same. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So anyway.
I was shocked to hear you were going to be playing a 7-foot grand piano at Interlake. Whose piano is that? They own a 7-foot grand there?
Well, we're actually getting this one from an outfit in Massachusetts.
Just on loan for the show?
It's a loaner for the show. You rent it for 2 nights. And I happenstanced into them because normally we would go to Nashua to get it. But I can't remember if they didn't have one or the one that they normally loan got sold, so they didn't have a traveling piano anymore. So it's a bit of a struggle, oddly enough, to find a piano rental. There used to be one in Vermont, in White River Junction, that would bring one over, but they stopped doing that. There used to be a place in hours bouncing between 2 pianos, just going back and forth, like which one is going to fit better. So,
and you're not a pianist.
But I don't make a living at it, and like anything, you never think you're, or at least for me, never think you're good enough. It's that classic comparing yourself to other people kind of thing. Yes, I'm better than somebody.
I think of you as a pianist. So.
Yeah, I know my frailties, like anything. I can do certain things, and there's so many things I cannot do, so I don't go there.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Did you play through college, and at what point did you make music your career?
Well, it was interesting. In again, starting at age 9, I took the lessons right up through high school and everything. Hooked up with a really good jazz teacher, friend of my dad's, down in Norwood, Mass. Bill St. Laurent. I don't know if Bill is around anymore. But that's when I kind of get introduced to jazz, was maybe end of junior high, I think. So I took lessons right through high school, and anyone out there knows music, or I think most states do this, is you know, you have your all-state district and all-state competitions. So Massachusetts was broken up into districts. You know, New Hampshire is broken up into music districts. You know, Middle Central, Middle West, that kind of thing. So was in those things. So, you know, and if you look at, okay, I'm the all-state jazz pianist, which means there's one jazz pianist in the entire state that made it to this point.
That was you.
Yeah, that was me, you know, which that wasn't me every year. I think I made it 2 years. You know, but it was fun back in high school. The performance was at UMass Amherst. You know, so you get driven out and you stay with a host family, and you know, you laugh at not being able to unwrap chocolates and all kinds of weird stuff. And I remember, and I roomed with my really good friend guitarist at the time, and you know, we just had a blast. So yeah, there was that. And then because music was what I knew, I was a good student, you know, but I kind of like, if you can skirt by, you skirt by. No one, Mom, if you're listening, I didn't say that.
But you did go off to college to study piano.
My first year was University of Miami in Florida to study jazz. But it was the realization there that it became work. And it was more competitive when you're now in college with all the other people that were in their all states. Yeah. You know what I mean? So that's when the mental game kicks in a little bit. So I was there for a year. I did okay. I learned a lot of stuff, but the best learning for me came after I left my freshman year. Because in the moment, I was 17, you know, and you're trying to absorb and you're nervous and you don't want to play in front of anybody. And, you know, it's just an intimidating situation. So it was more an inability to accept or understand what I was being presented with. Do you know what I mean? If a teacher tells you something and you don't understand the words, or you don't understand where they're coming from, you nod your head and you think you know, just to move on.
Sure.
But it was really the year or two after a lot of it started, oh, that's what he meant. Or if it's a technique and you end up playing it accidentally one day, the bells were going up. That's what he meant. That's what he meant. You know, so the learning for me came after I left music school.
That's interesting, because I went to art school as well and studied fine art. And I have to admit, same thing, 18, 19 years old, they were talking a language I had really why, or I didn't know what it meant. But years later, not just immediately after, but many, many years later, I started to understand what they were trying to tell me. So I get that.
Well, it's the same for me too. I learned a lot when I was still late teens, early 20s from that college experience, but I didn't really learn to play and start to internalize it until I was probably close to 40, you know, where you start to like, I'll never play like that person. Why am I trying to mimic that person? Why am I trying to play this music? It's not my music, it's someone else's music. Yeah. And you finally give yourself the freedom to say, why am I trying so hard to play like a song that's beyond my reach? You know, what would be the point of doing this? It's different. I've had this discussion with classical pianists as well, because there's innumerable classic piano things that, you know, the Chopins and the Bachs and all the stuff that classical pianists yearn to play. And I don't know if it's a rite of passage or something to be able to get, you know, past, you know, the well-tempered clavier and stuff, but I just never aspired to get to that, oh, I played it. Did I play it well? No. So keep playing it more till you play it well. And then you look at it going, well, what did I accomplish by that? I'll never perform this anywhere, you know. So it's that line of self-satisfaction, personal growth, versus why am I doing this in the first place? Why? So that I migrated more to jazz, because jazz, in my opinion, is way more forgiving than classical. If you make a mistake in Moonlight Sonata, people are going to know you just made a mistake in Moonlight Sonata.
So you have to play it exactly that way every single time.
You can interpret it differently. slow, fast, smooth,
Sure.
rugged, whatever you want to play. But if you hit a
Miss a
wrong
note.
note or a clunker, you're gonna know. And that implied pressure was just, that's probably why I got out of music. It was just too much.
It's interesting. I was listening to a conversation, and I wasn't part of it. I was just on the sidelines. A pianist who played, I think it was the person who played with Randy Roos, clearly a very accomplished pianist, been playing the better part of his life. He was probably in his 50s or 60s.
Who played here?
Yeah.
Steve Hunt? Yeah.
Was it Steve Hunt? Yeah. I'm pretty sure it was Steve that was saying this. And if it wasn't Steve, I apologize. But he's a classical pianist as well. Is that true with Steve? Would you say that's true?
That is true.
Yeah.
And I had a quick discussion during.
Maybe I heard your conversation with him. I don't know. But he was talking about trying to rise to the level of being able to play some of these amazing sonatas or amazing classical piano tunes, and to hear him talk as if this was like a not achievable task was shocking to me, because he was clearly a very good pianist, but it's another level. It was clearly for him anyway, and maybe as you're describing it for everybody, it's another level to achieve excellence in that category.
And then again, back in college, I remember my roommate he was pre-med, but he was taking math or something. And, you have your homework at night and, do problems 1 through 20 on page 10, right?
Yep.
And your homework is done. And it occurred to me at that time, it's like, if you're learning to play an instrument or be a performer, you're never done.
Never.
You're never done.
Never.
And then to prove that if you hand in 20 math problems and you get graded, you're done for the moment. You're being judged, in that way. I'd rather be the judge than be judged.
That's really fascinating.
So I think that's a lot of it is just a fear of, acceptance or whatever the human frailties we have are. But,
Yeah, no, I totally recognize what you're talking about. That's very interesting. I haven't heard it put quite that way before, but it does make a lot of sense. And I know at that point, after a year, you transitioned and became a computer programmer.
So after that first year of college, it was funny. I was supposed to take the history of jazz during my second semester, and I took basic computer programming instead. And they slapped my wrist saying, "What are you doing? You're going to have to make up this class and everything." And it was one of those things, it clicked instantly with me, or getting this machine to work the way you want it to work for you. You know what I mean? It was instant gratification. It's kind of like painting. As much as I hate painting a room, it's instant gratification.
It's the 20 questions that you have, the 20 math questions.
Right.
You got them done.
Right.
Finished.
Right.
So you did that as a career for many years.
Right.
Did you play while did you just drop the piano cold at that point, or did you continue to?
No, I ended up taking lessons. Actually, it was kind of funny. I lived down in southern New Hampshire, a little town called Wilton. It's next to Milford, down in the Nashua stretch.
Yep.
And we were driving through Mason, New Hampshire, on our way to this great pancake place. I don't know if it's still there anymore. And we're driving in the middle of nowhere, and there's a sign hanging from a tree, jazz piano lessons. It's like, what? So we pulled the car over, and I walked up to this house, and it was kind of a little spooky, just this big white house. And I knocked on the door, and they answered the door, and it was sort of a commune environment. They were all dining at this very long table.
Oh, wow.
Children in bare feet, and people it was just kind of weird in the moment. And one guy with this very long beard, Danny, got up and he said, "Can I help you?" I said, "Yeah, I saw the sign for jazz piano lessons." And he says, "Oh, I'm the jazz teacher." Oh, and it was more like, "Yeah, I'm the jazz teacher," So he was like, "Okay, here we go." Long story short, he was part of this communal living environment.
Yeah.
But he had built a brand new barn, sort of downhill from where the house was.
Yep.
You can't see it from the road necessarily. Brand new pine barn. He lived in the barn. 9-foot Steinway grand piano
Oh,
in this barn.
wow.
So he and I hit it off. I probably took lessons from him for a couple of years. But he was an interesting guy because what I said it hit me around 40. Just give yourself some freedom, right? Who just play because you want to play. Danny was that guy in my 20s. But again, I didn't really absorb it. He wasn't a lecturer. He wasn't a technique person. He was just like, play this, try this, do this, whatever. So to your question, yes, I continued to take lessons, but it was an interesting visit.
So I just have to ask, because we've been sitting in front of a piano for the last 20 minutes. If we were to ask you to play something, first of all, have you ever written your own music?
I have written my own music. I put out a CD back in the mid-90s, actually, of all original stuff.
Would you be able or willing or interested in playing an original tune?
I could, and of course, now that the camera's on and the nerves kick in, this is the I'll be judged.
Well, then no, take that away, because I wouldn't want it to be about that. I'd be interested if you were to play something, I'd want it to be something you would be inspired to play for some reason or another. It doesn't have to be something you've written. It can be something you've interpreted. It could be something, whatever. I would just want you to play a few notes of something that was inspirational to you, or maybe something that moved you along your way, your learning path. I don't know. So
we can try. It's interesting because Travis was here before. He's like, "What inspires you?" And it's like, that's a really good question. I don't necessarily get inspired by things.
Ever?
It's just weird. I don't know. Agnostic towards inspiration. So
I like that face, because I'm thinking Bob is the type that gets very inspired by lots of things all the time.
Yes.
But I think I'm with you. I'm more than there are things that you get interested in and things that might, throw some interest. But
well, it's interesting you say that, though, because I sometimes feel like I recognize inspiration in you in the way in which you respond to some of the players that are here, not necessarily just piano players, but musicality or people who seem to spark something in you. And there's been a couple times after performances that you've sat down and sort of jammed with somebody on stage or maybe before the performance. And there seems to be something that looks like inspiration there. Am I wrong? Maybe I'm wrong.
No, maybe that's as close as I get. It's sort of the in the moment thing, and I'm thinking when I sit in the back and I mix sound for whoever's playing, there's a musical mind up here somewhere, right?
Clearly.
There's if they play a riff or a rhythm or a harmony or something that just catches me off guard, I instantly go into analysis mode. Oh, that was beautiful.
How did they do that?
How did they do that? And Heather Pearson, who's playing here this Thursday for the Charlie Brown Christmas special, I emailed her because there's a part of the.
I love that part.
The next chord I can never figure out. And I emailed her and I said, "You have to show me what that next sequence is." And she replied back, "Of course, I'll show you." But there's things like that it's odd. You think you can find it. My ear hears a certain thing, and then you go to find the right notes, and it doesn't quite match up. And then you get all deflated, and then.
Now, if you saw the written music for that,
which I've never done, and it's very strange you mention that, because I started doing this one back in high school, just by ear from the special. And I remember our director of bands at the time, Mr. Bianchi, heard me playing it once, and I was playing it this way. And he came in and he said, "That's wrong." And I said, "Well, what is it?" if you can see the keyboard, it's a
Here,
B. Oh, it's all right. It's this chord, and I was playing this chord because I wasn't developed
So that's
enough
what you
at
heard.
15. Yeah, and again, I wasn't playing to the recording. It's just like, that sounds kind of right. And he came in from his office. No.
I can hear it. It wasn't right. And I would have never have recognized it. It's only because you're explaining to me, but I could hear that that wasn't exactly what I'm used to hearing when I hear that tune.
Right. So the Charlie Brown thing, I mean, you get asked to play it all the time. I get asked to play Piano Man, and I have to play the music. I don't like Piano Man, sorry, Billy Joel people. But that's a joke among pianists as well. It's like, just don't ask me to play Piano Man. It's the curse.
What is that in the stage show, the Leonard Skinner song?
Oh, Freebird?
Freebird, yeah. Just don't ask us to play Freebird.
Yeah, I know, exactly. So, so there was that, and then came, what is that, snow falling or something, and then Christmas is coming.
That's skating. I think that was skating.
Skating, yes.
I had the book.
Yeah, that kind of thing. And then,
So last night, and it was the first time I'd heard Charlie Brown Christmas played on a symphony, which was,
orchestrally.
which was really
Yeah.
special. It's one of my favorite shows. I actually saw George Winston
Okay.
perform the Charlie Brown Christmas show in Burlington, Vermont, and it was really a moving experience. We got to sit right up front. We were in the first 3 rows, or maybe even the first row, and he was 12 feet from us on stage with a giant piano, and it was a beautiful show. And so to see it on a symphony, and then again, like you said, we have Heather Pearson doing the show here, which I can't wait for. It's going to be.
And there's another guy, Walter Chestnut is his name, I believe, also a pianist. He has his version of the Charlie Brown Christmas album too, which I have. I don't have the George Winston version, but
Does George Winston
Chestnut
tour?
He did. I don't know if he's still touring.
Still around. I don't know. I was never a Winston fan, but that's
You what?
I was never a George Winston fan. Same with Keith Jarrett. Oh, did you hear Keith Jarrett's concert? It's like,
I don't know that I don't know that I'm a George Winston fan per se, but I was a huge fan of George Winston's Charlie Brown Christmas, and I bought the CD and have played it every year since then.
To each his own. It's like food. I love this. I hate this. I like this wine. I hate this. It's just you can't explain to someone why you should like this. But don't you know it has notes of current in it? It's like, I don't even know what a current is.
Notes.
Notes. Yeah, good one. Right. So I forget what the question was, but anyway, the Charlie Brown stuff was like.
Who's joined us today? Do we have any comments from the audience?
Regulars. We have some sound issues. I realize I don't think we're not hardwired, are we?
Oh.
That's the thing. Yeah. So
we went down the checklist. We got this.
Yeah.
We got this.
We forgot that bit, but so sound's been a little funky, but we have several on. Christina's joined us. Priscilla, Karen's on. Geraldine joined us. Matt and Lynn tuned in a little late, but they're here. So yeah, the usual crowd.
Great.
Always good to see everyone. Yeah.
Well, hopefully the sound works. Let's hear a tune.
Let's see. Well, we can do the. Yeah. And even right here, and this is where jazz is. If that was written out, you would play it a certain way. And it's only until recently, again, even now that I in my 50s and 60s, realized there's even more freedoms to take. There's no reason to play by the rules. I'll play it in a second, but there's a book called Effortless Mastery by a pianist.
Sounds like an oxymoron.
Kenny Werner. And Kenny is, in fact, John Lorenz knows Kenny Werner. I think he was his apprentice or something like that. It's kind of funny. But there's a phrase in Kenny's book that we are taught or brought up in this culture to be told what should be beautiful musically. If you played people are going to go, that's horrible. What was that? Right? And there's something in the book where he says, if someone told us at 18 months old that the sound of a refrigerator coming on is beautiful, we would completely reorient ourselves to what sound is. And Kenny Werner's technique is there's no right or wrong. There's just notes. And a few years ago, I just started experimenting with that. Instead of like, oh, I have to play this chord. Okay, that's the way you play it. Just play anything and see where it goes. So I started experimenting a few years ago, just letting my hands hit the keys wherever they fell. Okay? Doesn't sound great necessarily, but where did you end up? And then my ear kicks in. Let's play another weird one. Right? So your ear, at least my ear, guides me into that kind of sounds like, okay, that's a G7 augmented, which I can minor. And if I do that, I can go to F, I can go to B flat, I can end up in E flat.
To use a chef analogy, it's like making a soup.
And you just start putting
the
stuff
ingredients in.
Yeah, and then see where it takes you.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't mean it's bad if you put too much of something in. You can offset it by putting something else in.
Funny the way you describe that, because earlier today I tripped over on social media or something. I tripped over this video where somebody had their neighbor's car alarm was going off all the time. So they brought their keyboard out onto the patio, and they used the car alarm as sort of their metronome for a tune, and they wrote a song to the car alarm, and it actually was
sort of thing.
really cool.
Yeah.
There's a great video out there of what's her name? Kristen Chenoweth, I believe, in like a hotel lobby or an elevator, and she's harmonizing with the like fire alarm or something like that. And it's wonderful. Yeah, just those sorts of noises that might be terrible noises, but you can make something out of it.
Well, I love that there's so many ideas about what you're talking about that cross all the boundaries of art and creativity, and we can analyze this relative to cooking, relative to taking pictures. For me as a photographer, as a painter, as someone who draws, that all of these ideas, and as Ken, a winemaker, what makes a good wine, and as you said, everybody who walks through the door might have a different opinion about that, right? So, so then if you throw it open, right, and you say, so all food is good, all combinations of food is good to somebody, right? All combinations of notes are good to somebody. Somebody will find something in that they can be inspired by or can appreciate. So then you have to start to say to yourself, so then what might make something exceptional? Why is one soup exceptional over another? And why is one type of wine particularly exceptional, or one series of notes on a piano? And that becomes another whole fascinating.
But that comes back to you're being judged by someone that tells you that. If your wine wins a prize, in that moment,
but I would propose possibly, and I've thought a little bit about this for sure. Actually, I've probably thought about this a lot, but I would propose that if you take the judgment away completely, so it's never, let's not ever put a score to it or ask somebody to evaluate it and put a grade to it. But like, for example, this came to mind, the Greeks came up with certain patterns that visually work, certain ratios of windows to doors, or
golden triangle and all that.
Yes,
kind of stuff.
and
Parthenon. Yep.
And these things became sort of naturally accepted. You don't need to study it. You don't even know what those are, and most people see it and appreciate it, possibly without knowing they did. But my point is that something exceptional was created. And it became exceptional despite itself. Nobody judged it, Nobody scored it. Nobody said that that is the ratio, or maybe they did, I don't know, but it's been around for thousands of years, and it is generally accepted that these certain ratios are visually very pleasing. That's one very simplistic example, but I think that also applies to all forms of art, that there's a time in which, or a place in which, when you achieve some sort of musicality or visual expression, if it's in the visual arts or something, that moves people in a way that's unique and special and not graded, but just moves people, causes people to, like, I think Charlie Brown Christmas is in some way one of those ideas, is that it's a very moving piece. You know, and it's hard to find someone who isn't at least a little bit moved by that.
But is it because you were watching the TV show in 1960 as a child?
Maybe.
And that's, if you just heard the soundtrack without knowing it came from Charlie Brown, would you hear it differently? Would you think it's great art? I'm not entirely sure.
I don't know, although I haven't heard Charlie Brown Christmas for 40 years, so I don't even know what the story is anymore. But the music still, every time it's played, it moves me. But you're right. I mean, as you said, when you're young and you're impressionable and you're taught this at a very young age, that it sinks in. But I think if we had more than an hour, we could probably find other interesting examples of art that moves people in very unique and special ways. And I'm not talking about grading. I think you know what I'm talking about. I mean, have you ever been moved by something that's where you're not even being asked to give an opinion, and the person might not even be present to hear it, even if you did give it. So, but there's a time and place where you just go, wow.
It's funny you say that, because I think we've shared sunset stories. I think that's the only thing I tend to take pictures of. If I'm on the road in North Conway, I'll stop and take a picture of a sunset. You know, so it's just very odd and the weird. And I learned the word entropy back in high school. Entropy is just pure randomness, right? This thing will never occur. This wave will never hit the shore exactly the same way ever again, right?
Well, entropy refers to a deterioration.
Then I'm misusing the word, but my interpretation was really it's an unrepeatable event in exactly the way that it just occurred. Same with sunsets. You wait literally 30 seconds and it changes because the sun is moving so fast at that point. So yes, I have those moments of that. And I just want to tap onto the Greek thing for a minute, which is interesting. There's a certain scale, pentatonic scale, 5 notes, that I believe the Greeks determined was a very universal sounding, pleasing thing. And we actually had a set of wind chimes a long time ago that was pentatonic. Like, you can do no wrong. It doesn't matter what order. There's nothing wrong or offensive or dissonant. Thank you. I was going to say, dissonant about that. So that was a discovery there. But so if you look back whatever dawn of time stuff, when they came up with that, my recent discovery, and if there's any musicians out there, you can say what an idiot you are. I don't know if you can show the keyboard here. So those 5 notes in a C scale, 1, 2, 3, 5, 6. You just count the notes. There's no 4. So 1, 2, 3, 5, 6. But in jazz parlance, and it took me a really long time to figure this out, there's a certain jazz sound that's modern, you know, that kind of thing, as opposed to, that's very traditional, right? But there's a more modern take, and that's based off of fourths. So you count up 4 notes every time. What I recently discovered, the pentatonic, you can break it out into fourths. Whoops, wrong one. Now you have the jazz version of what came from. So the point being, maybe that's why this modern jazz sound works, because it's based on something so primordially simple. But I never knew to break it out. Same notes, just in a different orientation. And
So
you get a whole different sound.
Is there a that's fascinating to me that there's something similar to the architectural world. So is there a song or songs, are there songs that you could identify that have that at their root, that have those 4 notes?
This is different. There's the pentatonic scale, but there's also, that's different from the like Pachelbel's canon progression, right? That like
Dun, 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 dun. Yes.
that's a different similar thing, because that progression of chords is, there are YouTube videos of this that's like, like every pop song or all these songs that are following that exact same chord progression. You can put it together a medley, and it sort of shows how they're all the same.
There's certain universals, I think, and it's interesting too. And again, it's self-discovery, but after 5 decades of being cemented in certain ways of jazz, it's hard to, like, the old dog new tricks kind of thing. So it's a struggle now to internalize some of these things. But jazz is, Pat Metheny's and the Carole Kings and everything. 2-5-1 is going up in fourths up the scale. Okay, it's just a pattern. But the folk people and James Taylor and stuff took the pattern and went in the other direction. So instead of going up in fourths, they go down in fourths. And it gives a whole different feel. It makes perfect sense, but you're going in opposite directions.
So that brings to mind somebody, some musician, or maybe it was a pianist, played, and maybe I saw this on social media too, I don't know, but they played a whole array of songs in the folk style, in the bluegrass style, in the country style, so it was just fascinating to see, and they were clearly all the same song, but very different in presentation, and it must be, I can't even imagine, and we again need more than an hour to talk about how in which you just described one very small example of how you went from jazz to folk with the same series of notes. But that's fascinating.
But the thing that's hard for me, which is why, again, I don't consider myself a musician per se, is like anything, there's muscle memory. You get used to playing certain patterns over time, right? So that sequence I just played, that would be my education told me to do it that way. To do it the other way is conscious thought. And any psychologist will tell you, you want to play from your subconscious. You want to just be. You don't want to think, right? But I have to think that through. If I'm here on piano night trying to come up with the ending to something, which, by the way, when you play, it sounds like the end of Beatles, here, here, here we come, right? There's it. Right? Again, that's going in the other direction, down and forth instead of up and forth. So I have to think really hard in the moment. If I want to end up here, I have to go, I'm calculating in real time, what should I be playing to end up here? And then when you screw up, it's like, well, okay, and that's the Kenny Warner kicking in. There's no wrong notes. Play whatever you hit and own it, So, but again, classical, you couldn't do that. But jazz, you can kind of get away with.
Classical's a little more rigid.
More rigid, and again, more studied, I think. But to be a great player, all of the technique comes from classical everything. I don't know. Yeah, I'll just leave it there. That's why you learn. So
to be a great jazz player,
you probably should be a really good
classical,
or just have an innate understanding of fingerings and technique, and when to go flat and when to go curved, and when to stretch.
I wanted to play violin as a kid, and I didn't want to play violin. I wanted to play the fiddle. And nobody would teach me the fiddle. They said, you got to learn classical first.
They might have been right
They might have been right, but
But it's so hard.
they
to get
were
through
clearly
that.
wrong,
Right,
because
right.
I never played the violin again.
Right.
It was very sad,
Right.
because I wish I'd learned to play the fiddle.
But I have since learned they are two different things. I talked to violinists who play, no, it's not violin, it's fiddle. Well, it is a fiddle. No, the music you would play with this is fiddle music. And there was a whole thing to it. There's generally no music. You play it by ear.
Yep.
And just follow me. You'll be fine. You know, a certain set of chords and stuff. It is an entirely different beast.
Yeah.
I can set you up with a fiddle.
Someday I might.
teacher.
I did take a stab at it in my 30s. I took a lesson, or I think I took lessons for about a year. But then life moved on and got in the way. I still have my fiddle. I saw it the other day in my storage. So
There's one back there.
there's one back there.
That's
Yeah.
Stephanie's, right?
Yeah. So we are coming to the end.
yeah.
It would be
So-
nice to hear a short tune, I think.
And this is the chord again before that is written, but you can. So, you know, you might think that was a wrong note, but it's like, it fits perfectly, right? To me, it was a mistake, but it's like I knew how to cover my mistake with a different chord on top. Is that wrong? I don't know. There was a whole bunch of
So
notes.
that's interesting, because oftentimes when I hear songs that I'm relatively familiar with, and sometimes even ones that I'm not, especially in the world of jazz, there'll be a change that seems jarring. And initially I'll be jarred by it, which I think is maybe to the point, because very often in the next set of notes, they make somewhat sense. You understood. They wanted to sort of break me out of my trance, my listening trance, or whatever it is, and that off note did it. It was it woke me up.
I think one of the major points of music dating back to wherever, maybe just past Gregorian chants, is the whole concept of dissonance and resolution. It's like dark and light.
Yep.
You can't see light unless you have something to compare it to. You need dark in order to see light, or to have it make sense.
You need good
to you,
in order to have evil,
right?
or evil in order to have good.
So for a piano, it's you have to have dissonance, and that's the grabber going, that doesn't sound quite right. Well, I'm not finished yet. Give me a moment. And it's all based on the sacred music, Amen. That's what our mind wants to go to. It's called going home. What does home mean? Home is the key that the song is in. What feels right, it's getting back to earth. That's not home. This is home. Can you hear that first chord didn't quite... Concept of when are you gonna amen me?
When are you gonna go home?
When are you gonna go home, right?
It seems like there's something of that in the church.
When it goes into the key of D flat from F, so the whole song's in F. And then it goes into D flat.
Going home.
And if you look at the keys, F, there's really no shared notes between that and D flat. is one shared note, and it happens to be F. So taking you out of, you feel safe here. And then I'll take you back. I'm not home yet. Not home yet now. So anyway, yeah. A little bit of playing.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. And I can't even believe we've been sitting here for an hour.
Easy hour.
Chatting. It was really great. I learned a lot, and I really enjoyed chatting with you. I hope everybody else out there did as well. And if you didn't get the point, the reason that we're here talking with Chris is that one, Chris plays here. He plays his piano many nights throughout the year, and I hope you can come out and see him play.
Friday night I'll be here.
Friday night. And so every Friday and Saturday from 7 to 9, and possibly in the winter we're going to shift up the
I have
timing.
to talk to you about that. Yes.
Yeah, we may extend it a little longer. We don't know yet, but that's in the discussions. And of course, every Thursday night we have our listening room series, and sometimes Chris and sometimes some other artists will play as a warm-up act for the primary show. And if we're lucky, possibly we're working with somebody who had a folk show. Mm-hmm. We might be able to do. So we're thinking about adding a folk series. And somebody mentioned a Sunday afternoon series. Coming up with something on a Sunday afternoon, and I thought that'd be a great idea. Sort of like a Sunday brunch. Come and listen to some.
It's always great. I know there are folks that they can't make it up on a Thursday ever.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
They, would love music at other times, even if it's just sort of once a month on Sunday or various things like that. It's always great opportunities.
So that's why we're here today. That's one of the reasons, anyway, that we're here talking about this, because this is it's become a really important part. We started a winery because of our love of wine, and then we started a restaurant because of our love.
We built a piano because of our love of piano.
Well, we bought this wonderful piano so that we get the opportunity to hear great pianists play it. And it's actually what happens. So it's really been special.
And to that point too, and it is important too, of all the pianists that have played here on the Thursday night shows, every single one of them is so appreciative to have this instrument for the evening.
It really is true.
Because I've done my share of bar gigs and just the rickety old grandma pianos and everything. So this is a special place for the musicians, not only for this piano, but the venue itself. So that's the talent you're attracting, John is attracting, everything has been outstanding. I'm floored every time. I may not enjoy the music every time, but the musicianship and the delivery is just top shelf.
And I think because the musicians are enjoying so much the opportunity to play this instrument and in this space, that it makes the performance that much better on their end, which is going to make it better for the audience. Right. And the audience is going to be better, and you get that feedback.
I have appreciated good music, beautiful music all my life. And in this last year, I've had the opportunity to hear and appreciate music like never before. And I agree with you. Not every show moves me the same way. There's clearly certain types of music that I'm more enthusiastic about, but nonetheless, every show makes an impression on me. I'm so impressed by the musicality and by the talent of the musicians on the stage that even if it's not a selection of music that I might choose to put on the stereo or on the record player, I can appreciate it and find value in it because it's being performed with such excitement and such passion and energy. And so it's been an amazing experience. I hope you all get to come and join us for it because I want to do this for the rest of my life. I want to be able to continue to grow. I've learned a lot. I've learned about music, but from talking to all of the musicians, from listening. I mean, you're just sitting and listening is like learning a new language. Right. If you listen to enough of that language, you will eventually be impressed upon it enough that you can begin to understand it, and maybe someday learn to speak it. Maybe not in the form of as a musician, but in the form of my ability to appreciate it as an art form in a way that's unique or different. So,
well, maybe I'll learn to like wine that way too, Bob, someday.
No, it's not critical because we sell beer here too.
True.
And we actually have talked about it. At some point, we will have spirits. So I don't know if you have an interest in spirits, but at some point, we'll probably bring
Not
that
so
into
much,
the
but
equation. I tend to not, as I always say, discriminate against any of the alcohols. There's a time and place for all of them.
There's a song title in there somewhere.
Yeah.
Non-discriminatory alcohol. I don't know, something. Yeah. Anyway.
So we're past
well
our
over.
time.
Yeah.
Thank
Cheers,
you, everybody,
everybody.
for joining us tonight. And I hope you do get to come out and join us live. There's nothing that can replace the opportunity to be here live in this room, listening to this beautiful instrument, listening to Chris or some of the other players. And Thursday nights, the same thing with lots of other musicians on stage. So please come on out, support our music venue. Let's make this work. And we'll see you for a show. Have a great
Cheers.
evening, everybody. Good night.